Hey everyone, before we start today's episode, I assume that many of you on social media have seen that Kathy Buchanan, our dear friend, writer, producer for the show, that her husband Sean passed away suddenly in a vehicular accident this last Friday on August 2nd. So obviously, please, be praying for Kathy and all five of their kids as they're trying to deal with everything going on right now. But I wanted to let you all know that there is firstly a fundraiser set up by a friend of theirs on GoFundMe to help Kathy and all of their kids to deal with all of the expenses for the service and the move that they were in the middle of when this happened. And Kathy has also asked everyone that in lieu of flowers or things like that to donate to Casa de Paz, which is a house in Colorado which helps house and lodge people, families of immigrants who are being detained by ICE so that they're able to stay in this place for free while they're visiting families who are being detained, or after they get out of holding, that it gives them a place to stay and get supplies and get on their feet while they find a place to live or get a job, which is, an amazing thing. So links to the GoFundMe for the Buchanan family, as well as the website for Casa de Paz, are down in the description. So please check out both of those and donate if you can, and be in prayer for Kathy and her whole family and everyone else on the team and who knew Sean and is going through this right now. So thanks, and we'll let you start your regular episode. Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
Oh, right. I'm here too. Yeah.
Did you forget that I just counted down for us to start?
I zoned out for a second.
Uh-huh. That's valid. This is episode 173 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
We're going to do a what if. We're going to do another what if.
Yes, it's been a while.
This
is a very good one.
Another one of my... Sorry, this one's another one of my what ifs. And it is, what if the imagination station was never created?
Yeah.
Discuss. I have a list of things.
When Victoria sent this one to me, my mind immediately started firing off. This was a very good what if.
Thank you.
Okay.
My first thought was jokingly, what if the Transmuter was never created?
Oh, I talk about that.
We just did Malachi's message. And then I was like, oh, I could actually do a serious one and say the Imagination Station. And so this was my second choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would also mean the Room of Consequence and the Transmuter as well, because they're all literally the same technology.
Would it, though?
They're all the same thing.
Okay.
They're all literally the same machine, but with a different case on it. The restrictions between past and present and future are completely arbitrarily imposed.
So, first thing off my list is, of course, Wits End wouldn't be as popular. Like, Phil, the Flim Flam Man Phillips, this was one of the main things that he wanted to push in his marketing
the
changing
Rocket Blaster 5000 or whatever.
Yeah. And this is, like, when Blackgaard talks to Richard about, like, why Wits End is so much more popular than Blackgaard's Castle, one of the first things he thinks of is the Imagination Station.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that everyone knows about.
Which is great, because it had just been built at that time.
So I feel like Wits End would save a lot of money, but for not, like, constantly changing and modifying and, like, adding partitions and removing partitions and adding 5 billion doors. But
I mean, you don't think the slowness in business comparatively would...
That's what I was about to say. On one hand, they might, like, save money, but on the other hand, would they have made more money in the first place because of drawing people, because of the Imagination Station?
Honestly, I think the biggest cost for the Imagination Station is not dev time and parts, it's the electricity.
It's hospital bills for children getting injured inside of it.
Yeah, the therapy bills and physical therapy. No, it's probably the amount of electricity that it draws, honestly. Probably costs more than anything else, I bet.
Renee, would she be working at Wits End?
So to go in chronological order, because, we're talking about how the timeline would change, and time does typically move linearly in this show. So
Digger Digwillow doesn't become a Christian.
Well, yeah, there's lots.
Digger Digwillow doesn't create Wonderworld. Wonderworld never created. Jimmy
it's a good one.
Never gets in that accident.
It's interesting. I talked about Someone to Watch Over Me, but I didn't think about Wonderworld and Digger. I didn't think about the fact that Digger built it. That's a good one. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
it's creating album 5. Obviously, because we were just talking about it with the Blackgaard books. Lucy won't get hurt in the imagination station when it gets a power surge in the battle.
I have a list of things ricocheting from Lucy not getting injured.
So Blackgaard chose to power surge the imagination station because he always heard kids talking about it. Without that being there, he probably could have hurt someone else. It even could have caused an injury. But it's highly unlikely it would have been anything remotely on the same level because there's no other inventions at the time that we know of that involved you, like, climbing inside of them, like the imagination station. It probably would have been like the train set or the Bible room mirror, or nothing that would have harmed a kid a lot from a power surge. Yes.
I have stuff relating to this very heavily. So Lucy, I'm thinking either injured in a different way somehow.
Probably
or
not.
Just not injured at all. I'm thinking maybe he could have, like you were saying, done the surge on something else, like the train set.
The trains explode.
A train, like, goes off the tracks at very fast speed, hits Eugene in the face. Eugene has to get reconstructive surgery on his face. He looks completely different for the rest of the show. Katrina never falls in love with him. Then we ricochet off that, and a million other things change. Also, a bit more serious.
You've opened Pandora's box, Victoria. There's too many possibilities. Like Doctor Strange.
There's too many possibilities.
There's 14 million universes here.
Didn't, like, the Katrina doesn't become a Christian end with, like, Buck dying or something like that?
Something like that. Really usually most of our what ifs end with, like, catastrophic global domination by Blackgaard or Novacom and just a lot of death.
So, to be a bit more serious, and this draws on the books, because literally everything we've talked about lately is about Richard, as it should be. So go read the Blackgaard books if you don't want huge spoilers about Richard's character. Seriously, go read them.
Or watch
They're
our
amazing.
last 2 episodes.
I recommended them to one of our cousins the other day when we were driving down to the lake, told her about them. She sounds very interested. Only knew who Blackgaard was from one episode that she accidentally heard, because I guess their iTunes Odyssey library got kind of scrambled, and now they don't have all their old episodes, but yeah. She's like, I think I know who Blackgaard is. He did something. And I was like, yep, he did. Anyway, so Richard doesn't quit Blackgaard's castle because Lucy isn't injured. And he would stick around for longer. Lucy would stick around at Blackgaard's castle. Actually, she would leave because she would still overhear their plans probably. So Richard and Lucy would probably get, like, in a fight or something like that. Tell Richard she knows what's going on. Richard would eventually rat Blackgaard out in some form or way. I don't know if it would be as extreme as, like, setting the building on fire or something like that. He might just tell Whit, who contacts the police, and somehow gets Richard to come with him or something like that. Richard would still go to jail, maybe for reduced time, because of this. Blackgaard still escapes. I'm thinking basically everything in the Blackgaard saga would unfold mostly the same after this. Except no Blackgaard's revenge. Instead, he traps his soul electronically inside the coffee machine at Wit's End. And Whit has to stop selling... Whit has to stop selling all coffee because whenever they buy a new coffee machine, the virus just passes. They don't know how it does that. So they can't replace the broken one. So checkmate and win John Avery Whittaker. Blackgaard got his revenge on you fully. You can never sell coffee again.
If that had happened earlier then Connie wouldn't have been able to use the secret phrase to notify the police that they were being burgled in Hold Up.
Which means Connie and Eugene are now dead. So.
Yeah, except that happened, like, well before I'm 25.
Darkest timeline.
Darkest
Literally
timeline
everyone-
where Blackgaard is
Katrina's
trapped in
not
a
with
coffee
Eugene.
machine. It's
Eugene's
literally like
dead.
Portal 2.
Connie's dead.
He just becomes their sassy, like, anti-hero redemption arc, like, Peridot. I've had all of my, like, things stripped of me, and now I'm just, like, the grumpy little, like, or he's like, what's his face from Mob Psycho?
Dimple?
Yeah. That's who Blackgaard would be, and he would just be, like, making angry, snarky remarks from the coffee machine, and they'd be like, oh, Blackgaard.
And something horrible happens to Blackgaard, and they're like, aren't you worried about him? And they're like, oh, not really.
Basically, all I'm picturing is, like, the, like, slow clap scene when GLaDOS first gets, like, put into the potato in Portal 2 is what Blackgaard would be in the coffee maker. Yeah, so it's hard because I have all the things I thought about how the timeline will ripple, but you're going to have other things like that I didn't think of, and then they're going to, like, push against each other and try and, like, even each other
And then we
out.
just have a mess,
so, like,
a time mess.
Like you said, generally, it really is wibbly wobbly. We can theorize that if Wit didn't make the tech for the Imagination Station, that would also carry over to he didn't make the Room of Consequence and the Transmuter, and as you were alluding to before, losing the Transmuter is really where canon starts to fall apart entirely. It probably also means there's no Inspiration Station.
What does Malachi do instead?
I know.
Does
That's the real
Malachi...
question.
He's like, I feel like I need to inspire you for something that has to do with time travel, but not actually time travel.
Is
but
that
I
when he
can't,
makes the
but I don't know
Imagination
why.
Station instead?
Like, wait, I think you need to open up a different shop. This just isn't working.
In Connellsville, perhaps.
You missed your calling.
The Inspiration Station we probably also don't guess, but like you said, with the loss of all of these and mostly just the OG Imagination Station, we can start ticking off like the small differences for normal day-to-day adventures that didn't happen using the conventional usage of the machine that result in like changed interpersonal relationships, like the effect that it had on George and Jimmy in Moses the Passover, kids learning history in the Bible, coming to accepting faith and things like that.
Like
it's
Kelly
interesting that
and Digger.
Exactly. Since you talked about someone to watch over me, I thought that was very interesting because I also thought about it and how Jimmy spent the entire episode thinking, like his brain was justifying, like, oh, I'm in the Imagination Station, and that's why he couldn't, like, figure out what he was actually going on. So it makes me curious if he would have figured out that he was in a coma faster without a reasonable alternative explanation.
Jimmy's like, oh, I'm just a crazy person.
But as you pointed out, it's entirely possible he would not have been in a coma at all because Wonderworld would not have existed, which is a great thought.
This is all your fault, Mr. Whitaker.
Because it's funny, because I thought, what happened to Digger Digwell? He came back later, right? And then I was like, oh wait, no, I'm thinking of Davy Holcomb and Stars in Her Eyes. But no, yeah, because Digger did have that effect of building Wonderworld, and I forgot about that.
Yep.
Among the...
I was gonna say, and then there's that one episode where he went back to Wonderworld and he was like homeless and he's like, what do I do with my life? And they're like trying to get him out of Wonderworld. And I was like, when did that happen? I was like, oh, that was the ceiling fan. That was a joke. That didn't actually happen.
That was like, I think there was also an episode that was potentially going to be made. It talks about it in the guide that was going to happen for album 50, and that's how they were going to bring...
There was going to be an episode that had Digger back, but they didn't actually do it, and they didn't really say how they were going to do it. I think it was going to be for album 50, but the ceiling fan actually did have like a thing about...
I forgot they actually
Digger
did that.
And stuff.
Among the missing key experiences for people, obviously the most significant is Eugene's, because his journey to faith was tightly...
I didn't think about that.
Was very tightly tied to the Imagination Station, not just in The Time Has Come, but like back to Bethlehem and the star, everything that happened in the mortal coil to him, and then the climax of it in The Time Has Come. Certainly he would have...
Eugene's like, I don't fear death, and then goes through the series like that.
Certainly he would have...
Eugene never gets his memory back.
Listen.
Oh, wait, he wouldn't lose his memory.
We're going to get there, Victoria.
Never mind.
Certainly he would have ended up in the same place eventually, but that journey would have looked very different without any of those key moments.
Wait, what does Malachi come out of when he
I also thought about that.
Does he like...
He steps out of the Bible room mirror.
He steps out of the Bible room mirror and they believe he's an angel instantly.
Or the armor. Like, he's like Rodney, when Rodney put the statue, the tiny, like, Eiffel Tower.
It's like, sounds like a mystery. They just hear, like, weird noises on the security cameras. They're like, what's that? And a guy crawls out of the armor.
Exactly. So, speaking of the mortal coil, Wit never would have created the death program. Finding it, he would have found another way instead to help Connie understand, like, a spiritual perspective on death. So Wit never would have had this health crisis, which would rob Eugene of his traumatic hell experience. But it also...
Which means Jason's evil clone
Yeah.
never comes into
It also would have lost this reconciliatory moment between Wit's remaining family. And I don't think I can really quantify the effects of this, given that Jana is gone for the next several decades anyways, but I'd still rather it happened than not, of like Jana and Jason and Wit
Jana
coming together.
never would have fell out with that one character decades later if it weren't for the mortal coil.
So the whole healing program also would have been avoided, that whole debacle in album 24, which I don't think would have any lasting ripples, but I think generally the discord between Jason and Jack's designs for the shop would always present themselves in other ways, but it would have been different without some of the technology that was there.
Like, Jason still would have made the video games and stuff like that.
Yeah. I never really thought before, I don't think, about how Eugene's like faith journey was so tied in at so many points to the Imagination Station, because like Back to Bethlehem was a big thing for him, and the Star too, to a degree, and then the Mortal Coil was also a huge thing for him, and then it all like climaxes and the time has come. It's like a lot.
Yeah, Eugene might not become a Christian in this timeline.
I think he still would. Like, I think it's like things that are related to like, oh, this is
no,
God's
like it'd take
plan
longer,
for this
though.
someone's life, but it would look, like I said, it would look very differently. So with the time has come itself, I'm sure Eugene would have always been able to have his revelation of faith either way. Got to work things out with the tools available, but they wouldn't have had the search program to discover the tunnel's connection to the mineral. I'm also really annoyed that we never got a word to use for that mineral. They're like, oh, the locals called it the silent one. Ruka, I guess they called it, but it's still like...
We can just call it Rukata. People know what we're talking about.
But that's not remotely what the mineral is. The mineral was used to catalyze TA418, which bound with the Ruku virus to create Rukata. It's like several steps removed from what that is, which is why we just call it the mineral.
Maybe it's just dirt, and Blackgaard's dumb. It's just normal Odyssey dirt. He could have gotten it from literally any place. Like,
he had so many. He has so much tunnel access. Yeah, I also like, because that means that in the Underground Railroad, that the pastor was just like slapping dirt in people's wounds to heal them.
And people are like, Pastor, you have to stop. He's like, no, we'll fix it.
Dirt. Okay, so without the search program, Eugene and friends would have had to scour a impractically huge amount of data manually, or at least using search engines with presumably no ability to process a higher concept of inference like the Imagination Station has. The likelihood they could have solved that mystery in time is basically zero. So as far as I can think, it doesn't actually change that much until the very end of Darkness Before Dawn. Jason wouldn't put the pieces together, but Blackgaard would still frame him with the cassette, because Blackgaard wasn't even aware that Jason knew about the Ruku connection, so that would have happened anyways. He already had the audio from as soon as Jason found out Blackgaard was in town. Jason wouldn't... The thing that would change is after Jason gets out, because he still would have made his call to the NSA and being like, blah, 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 Blackgaard's alive, something crazy is going on, get me out of this jail cell. Jason would not...
Get me out of this
Since they wouldn't know that Blackgaard was after the mineral, Jason wouldn't tell Eugene, Bernard, and the Israelites to watch the tunnels for Bovril trying to take the mineral out in his truck, and Bovril would have gotten away in that moment. Jellyfish's confession still would have revealed the plan and sealed the other gap, so at that point, at the end of the last episode, they would have looked through Jellyfish's plan, they would have found out what was actually going on with the mineral. And there probably would have been another adventure later, kind of like the follow-ups that we had to the Green Ring Conspiracy, where they have to track down Bovril and get back the mineral before he can sell it. Or it would be at least mentioned offhand later, like, oh yeah, we found him, we got it all, it's good. And then, like you said, Blackgaard would not have had his titular revenge on Wit and poor Aubrey.
Maybe they can pull a Novacom and just never explain anything at the end.
I forgot, I even said in here, unless he implanted himself in the Bible room mirror like he was Snow White. Not he was Snow White, but in Snow White.
People are like, mirror, mirror on the wall, do I look nice? And he's like, you look ugly, be insecure about your appearance. And then Eugene with his horrible train-scarred face, like, comes up and he's like, mirror, and he's like, get out of here. Poor Eugene.
No.
He has like a train scar.
It
looks like the front of a train on his cheek.
This timeline is not kind to Eugene. Speaking thereof, so obviously the Imagination Station plays a very important role in Novacom. We know that Eugene's appointment to the radio wave study was influenced by Armitage, but we don't know if his experience working on the Imagination Station was another factor in choosing him for that specific study. Andromeda was aware somehow. We really never figure out how they kind of found out about Wit in the Imagination Station to figure out that they needed that tech for the hardware. I genuinely can't guess either way if Eugene's team would have been able to get the software in order or not without years of Eugene's experience working on the Imagination Station, because the similarities in the concepts.
I would like to imagine that some Novacom employees, like full-on adults, just like dressed up with like little propeller hats and like suspenders, and they're like, "Gee, Mr. Whitaker, we're gonna go on a trip in your cool machine," and he was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then they went in and analyzed it.
That's it was Monica.
It was Monica. She's like, "Hey, Jason, show me the ropes," and he was like, "Okay." More Monica.
You turn your mic down a little, or be a bit quieter. You're peaking a lot.
The Odyssey poll thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. There is on the if you go on the AIOC right now, the website, there is a survey where you can talk about like characters that you like or don't like, and kind of give both multiple choice based and open field form based feedback on like what kind of plots and stories you'd like to see in the future. So
I don't know about you.
I'll put a link in the description.
I typed out my opinions on the characters and what I want to see in the future of the show, and right as I did, I was like, they're gonna know right away that this is me. Like, Kathy sees this, she's gonna be like, "Oh, Victoria wrote this very clearly." You can all probably guess what my list said.
And which particular, perhaps, character it might involve.
Which certain character, male, gorgeous, confident, owns a lot of pop in his car for some reason, I want to see again. Dude, if you think there's a day that goes by without me thinking about Wellington's outrageous pop cooler in his limo,
I have I harbor no such delusion. Okay, so I kind of split possible timeline pathways depending on like what Eugene's team might have been able to accomplish in terms of what they could figure out without Eugene having previous experience with the technology. So I kind of explore, and then they all kind of converge together mostly, and then, we continue the timeline past that point. But the branching off does have some interesting things. So if he was not able to figure it out, that's pretty much where that would end for him. I'm sure Andromeda sponsored other studies in other locations. They were probably already doing that. But if no one anywhere was able to figure out this technology, Operation Think Tank would be a bust. I'll come back to this path later. If they were able to crack it somewhere else that wasn't with Eugene, we're pretty much at the other option anyways, which is Andromeda has the software, they don't have the hardware. Without a vector to deliver the technology conveniently, they have very limited political influence over likely like single individuals in select circumstances wherein they can control enough variables to like get them in a room where they can implant the technology close by or something. Like they could use it, but it would be extremely specific and limited in the ways that they could do it. Maybe they could swing some votes or use it to help with their lobbying effort somewhere, but it's probably pretty limited in scope for the time being. And then this rejoins us back to the other timeline from before. So regardless of if someone cracks the RWS software or not, we're assuming here that Eugene doesn't have the breakthroughs that he did in canon. Without those leads, Andromeda doesn't send Novacom to set up shop in Odyssey. Mitch moves somewhere else as their community relations rep, wherever else they go, and he never meets Connie.
Oh no, what will we do without Mitch? Actually, it'll kind of be a problem that we don't have Mitch.
And then Joanne later...
Oh no, I guess Richard will have to come and help us out. Guess Richard comes back in this time.
And then that means that Joanne has later a very much more boring road trip to DC by herself. Most notably, this means that Eugene and Katrina aren't forced into a sudden deathbed-side marriage and into running around the world and hiding for years. Armitage is still alive and grumpy as ever. Eugene and Katrina marry eventually, probably at the end of their long drawn-out, seemingly never-to-end engagement.
I feel like their engagement will take longer because Katrina won't, like, go after Eugene if he doesn't become a Christian as early.
What? Oh.
Well, like...
Interesting.
Like, she might take longer, we don't know she might end up with Brandon.
Eugene takes longer, but that is a fair assumption. You were correct. Eugene will keep on working at the college, Hand Up will never be formed, which is the largest and most significant deviation from canon here, and that's what really throws everything out of whack, even more so than not having the Transmuter. Eugene and Katrina never travel to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, never meet the Ashantis. Leonard escapes Dalton's captivity, travels to America, settling for a time in a homeless shelter in Connellsville.
Can you imagine the show nowadays without Everett and Leonard?
I know. Or Hand Up.
They're in like every
or the Transmuter or the Inspiration Station.
Hey. Never mind.
So Leonard would still come to Connellsville, stay in the homeless shelter. Grady would still invite him to a dinner at Wits End, but it is clear in Time for Action that with his disguise, Eugene would not recognize him unless they outed themselves to each other. And if they don't run into each other and get a delayed start to this arc, then Leonard will just return to Connellsville. He'll do his thing. He'll continue to come and go from the city, ever on the move, as was described by the guy who ran the homeless shelter. Eugene is never going to find him. Dalton stays free. Everett stays his misled son. Dalton is searching for Leonard, but without Hand Up and Eugene's connections to the Ashantis, he wouldn't have helped them in an undeniable truth, meaning no online news article that Dalton would use to find Eugene and come to Odyssey. And so that would just continue on. Dalton would never find Eugene or Leonard.
Do you think that Eugene would have a harder time opening up and relating to Buck and all that stuff because this stuff didn't happen with
probably
his dad?
I don't honestly, to skip ahead, I couldn't think of anything really post second hiatus that would change significantly without the Imagination Station.
What's the first hiatus?
That was between It's a Wrap and For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, between albums 28 and 29. When they got rid of the first full generation of kid characters, the Barclays were now gone. They got rid of Lucy, they got rid of Sam, and
that
stuff.
Was when
and they brought in
Kathy
Heather
joined. She said that
Heather and Jared and Sarah and
Kathy in the interview
Cody.
said that For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll were the first episodes that she really heard.
Yeah, the only episodes that they released in that hiatus was Christmas Around the World Parts 1 and 2.
Oh, no.
And then on the other branch of that timeline, if Eugene does manage to get the radio wave study working, Novacom would still come to Odyssey. They'd have no hardware to steal. Eugene still realizes what's going on. He runs off with Katrina, which triggers Armitage's murder and their marriage and the Leonard Meltzner saga and all that. Novacom would be taken down by the FBI even quicker because the panic of the looming launch date isn't there because they don't have the tech. Katrina and Eugene's travels around the world, they end when Eugene wipes his memory in a self-inflicted experiment in Washington. They return to Odyssey, but Wit is unable to offer any technology to help. They basically...
I feel like Eugene would still get his memory back.
He would, yes. They basically...
The Imagination Station that gave it back.
Exactly. They basically have to rely on prayer alone and therapy and stuff to heal Eugene's mind, which would presumably work eventually. Everything's hunky-dory from this point on. Leonard's stuff is on schedule. And that's about the extent of the timeline deviations. That
I really like Eugene in the memory episode, the 3-parter.
Yeah, the Eugene Returns
trilogy. You see him
trilogy.
so angry. What?
The Eugene Returns trilogy.
Yeah. You see him so angry.
Or I think I've called it before
the
most superlative trilogy.
And yeah, you never see Eugene angry like that. It's kind of nice to see him be that upset about something. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it's angsty, and I can get into that. So I can't really think of anything else. My list was pretty short. I came up with it in 1 minute. But it had a lot of things on it for 1 minute.
Well, it was also almost entirely things that I didn't think of.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we didn't have overlap there. So
The only things we said in common were basically some Novacom stuff. I wrote something down about Novacom, but you already said it.
Do you have any other reflections based on the ripples that I presented? Any other things you thought of that would bounce off that?
Hmm. I just keep on thinking about Eugene's face, his scarred face. Maybe he'd become a Bond villain.
Do you
He'd become
think
Jason's
do
villain.
you think anything in 25 would be affected by how Richard's story would be different in album 5 and his relationship with Lucy consequently? Like how would she feel
Yeah.
differently about him because she
I
wasn't sent to the
think
hospital by him?
I think there'd probably be a little bit more trust between them in the homecoming, because like by the time you get to album 25,
Yeah.
they're like buddies
Yeah.
and stuff. So it'd mainly be the homecoming
That's
is
fair.
where you would see the differences and stuff.
Good point.
I think Wit would be more quick to trust Richard in Waylaid,
Yeah.
because he has to do like a little bit of convincing for Richard and Waylaid. But if Richard and Wit work together with like bringing Blackgaard down, then it would go over a lot smoother. There'd be a lot more trust there.
I don't think it would affect Tom's opinion of him because,
No,
curiously,
definitely not.
Tom was always much more concerned about his barn than he was about the fact that he blew up Lucy.
Yeah.
Which, granted, I mean, Richard wasn't directly the one who blew up Lucy. I mean, and he was the one who directly set his barn on fire, tried to kill Tom and his horses. Well, tried to save Tom and his horses, but, you know.
Yeah, whenever Tom's like, he almost killed my horses, I'm like, he almost killed a little girl. Like, that's a lot worse.
I honestly
I get
never
that Tom
thought
almost
about that
died too,
before. Like,
but that was kind of on Tom slightly. I mean, you read the books and you're like, oh, maybe it was kind of Richard's fault. But Richard was also trying to put out the fire. He just doesn't know how to put out fire.
he's just very bad at things, okay? He's
so bad.
He's an
at
anti-Renaissance
putting things
man,
on
really.
I mean, to be fair, I would have done what he did, like, in terms of throwing water on it. I
don't think I would have
the fire
thrown it on the kerosene, probably. Because that's like throwing water on a grease fire, right?
Dumb Richard gets it all over his body, just like all the kerosene, and he set himself on fire, Devin. He doesn't know what he's doing.
I'm aware, Victoria.
He set himself on fire, took off his shirt, threw it, and then set the rest of the grounds on fire.
He threw it like into a hay pile.
It's like a Goofy short or something like that. I love Richard Maxwell so much, but he has no idea.
It is very tragically slapstick, yeah.
It's like that one time when I injured my hand and then I told the nurse what happened when she asked me, and then she laughed at me in the emergency room. Like, that's the same kind of thing. Like, I'm still slightly offended by that because I was in so much pain at the time and she was laughing at me. That's how Richard probably
wild series of events.
Yeah.
Man, that was scary.
Having
no one told me about it.
Rachel. What do you think Phil's thought process was? He was like writing it and he was like, oh, the horse is named Rachel. I can use this for trauma.
I told you, it's literally like Batman v Superman with like the Martha thing.
Rachel. I mean, kinda, yeah. Do you think, like, the next time he sees Tom, he's like, is Rachel okay? Like, your horse? And Tom's like, what is your deal with my one horse? He's like, I just have a lot of healing.
You're as bad as Jacob. No one cares about Leah. Why does no one ever care about Leah? They really, like, I didn't think the biblical parallels would go nearly that deep. I mean, they do make a joke when Tom's petting Rachel and he's like, oh, Leah, don't get jealous, but...
Yeah. I don't know, it's like Rachel, like Leah and Rachel are both like hurt or something like that, and he just like shoves Leah all the way. He's like, Rachel, are you okay?
I genuinely don't know if you're talking about Tom or about Jacob.
Both.
And then no one ever talks about Billa and Zilpa. Zillow. Yeah.
Nope.
So, yeah, I think that's all I have for this What If. I genuinely didn't expect this to turn into a third consecutive Blackgaard novel discussion.
I mean, yeah, I guess, what was it? It was Jeff Lewis, and then it was Hand Up, and now it's Richard Maxwell. And also Wellington in there somewhere, too.
In there somewhere, by which you mean, like, a thin veneer coating everything over the whole timeline?
I got a very big paintbrush, and I love painting Wellington.
We
over
have
everything.
big splats of certain things, but Wellington is the canvas upon which your side of the podcast is painted.
And it's a
He's the
beautiful
medium.
canvas.
He is the
Like,
substrate.
I died when I listened to I didn't listen to A Very Bassett Wedding, but I did
Never.
listen
You never
to
have, actually. Surprise. You've never listened to it before. You've been bluffing
I
this whole
just
time.
guessed literally every single thing Wellington did, and Devin told me what happened, and I was right. So like, yeah, I we talked about it in our interview with Kathy, and yeah, then I totally forgot about the line. I was like, I remember there was one line in it that Wellington said that I just like lost my mind when he said it, and it was when Connie and Wellington were first talking. I don't know if you remember the line.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Connie was like, "Oh, you must be the best man." And he was like, "In every possible way, my dear." And I was just like, "That was so smooth."
When I heard that line the first time, I was rolling my eyes like preemptively at you. Okay,
Yeah.
so should we wrap this episode then?
Yeah.
I felt like when I was figuring out the what if stuff, most of the stuff wasn't really cascading like the other ones. Like it was mostly like this thing would be different, and then stuff would pretty much go back to normal. Until it came to Novacom, which then cascades into Eugene and Katrina's relationship, which then cascaded into the whole Leonard Beltner saga. And I was like, yeah,
I was in charge of cascading for the first half.
that's the good stuff. Yeah. The Wonder...
Lawrence and Jimmy would not be friends.
That's
Lawrence
true.
never becomes a Christian.
And then
Lawrence never gets reunited with his dad in Hawaii.
Maureen would have been abducted by aliens because Jimmy didn't help him go after them in album 18.
Man, or universe where Lawrence and Jimmy aren't friends. That makes me sad.
Yeah, Aloha Oi, that's a good point.
I mean, the reason why like Lawrence started liking Jimmy and Jimmy started liking Lawrence was because he took him to Wonderworld.
You're right. And then if he didn't go with the Barclays and Aloha Oi, then he never would have reunited with his dad in Hawaii. As I literally just repeat word for word what you said, but yeah, you're correct.
And also his mom went down to Hawaii too.
Yeah. Crazy world.
Which also means it'd be really funny when like Lawrence's dad rescues the Barclays. He's like, "Oh, I have a son in Odyssey," and they're like, "Oh, cool." That's where the conversation ends.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we doing next time, Victoria? We just decided.
Yeah, it took me a second to remember the episode name. Rumplestiltskin, something, something, something.
Yeah, I don't know what the rest of the title is.
A wee little man killed a wee little man, or something like that. Which is the OAC episode, and then along with that, we're going to do our first half episode review. Welcome to Wits End. Everyone's favorite episode. No, I'm kidding.
I was just reminded, like, as I was writing this, because I was scrolling through my Omni Chronology playlist, so, like, I was basically skimming through all the episodes and thinking about, like, what would be affected differently by the lack of the Imagination Station, and I scrolled past Welcome to Wits End, and I was like, ah, yes, you exist. Forgot about you. Well, exist is a soft word. I mean...
you know that meme where it's like, I care about blah, blah, all these things equally.
Yeah.
The other day it's basically like, I care about all the half episodes equally. And later it's like, I don't care for Welcome to Wits End.
I mean, it's not even, it has the length of a half episode, but it's not a half episode. It's not an episode at all. It doesn't have a number.
No. It's a commercial.
Yes.
It's a 10-minute commercial.
Yes. In fairness, that's also what Dobson Comes to Town is also.
Yeah, but at least that one kind of has a plot.
It also at least takes place vaguely in media res.
Yeah.
I get granted, honestly, about the same amount as Chris being in Odyssey.
No, we're not going to talk about it.
Okay, yes. Next time we're doing our first half episode, it will be the 7 Deadly Dwarves, because fairy tales. We could have talked about fairy tale-o-vision.
We could have, but we're not
But we're
gonna.
not. So that's what we're doing next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I can't stop thinking about Richard Wellington. Deb, I have this pitch for a great episode.
Buddy
Okay,
Cop AIOO.
Richard, Jeff, the Mothman Lewis, and who was the other one?
Richard Maxwell?
I already said Richard, didn't I?
I don't know.
Oh, no,
was only half
Richard,
listening.
no. Someone Pearson. What's his name?
Chad Pearson.
Chad Pearson all compete for Connie's love. I've been thinking about it a couple times every week for the last month.
Did you say Mitch?
No, Richard, Chad Pearson, and Jeff the Mothman Lewis. You know, like at the end of Captain Marvel, where they like zoom in on her like plane and it says the Avenger on it or whatever. I like to think that's like Jeff and his plane.
That's
and
his call sign?
Yeah, it's the Mothman.
It's like Top Gun. Like Maverick and stuff. That's just what his call sign as a pilot is, which granted I think only applies to the military, but whatever.
Anyway, that's our longest outro ever. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye.